Good evening, my name is Ivy. I'm going to present on social work dilemmas. My presentation is going to be in two parts. The first one will be social work dilemmas. The second one will be their potential solutions. According to British Association of Social Work, dilemma is when two or more professional principles conflict. It means that those principles are also very important, but one has to be selected. And according to Banks, a dilemma is a choice between two or more equally unwelcome alternatives relating to human welfare. These could be centered around values, could be integrity, or social justice. Ethics in social work is built on a very strong ethical practice. It also deals with very complex and diverse clients. Social workers need to be able to navigate through the complex and moral challenges, as well as the legal complexity within their practice. The core ethical principles are centered on dignity and rights, confidentiality, respecting autonomy, professional integrity, and competency, which means continuous improvement by social workers, where they need to continuously learn and appreciate the terrain to be able to navigate around it. Dilemma is considered to be very complex because rights may be compromised and consequences may also be very unwelcome. The second issue is because legal and ethical rights for both parties needs to be taken into consideration. There is also risk involved in both courses of action when you are dealing with a dilemma. And lastly, social workers, they have procedural and ethical responsibility when they are dealing with a dilemma. My first example is confidentiality versus the duty to protect. Social workers are bound by those two, the confidentiality and duty to protect. An example is when a service user discloses their intention to harm themselves or to harm others. Social workers, because they are bound by those two as well, they need to then choose between respecting confidentiality or their ethical duty to protect from harm. So what they need to do is to consult from the supervisor or consult with the ethics committee. They discuss the situation in all angles, respecting and maintaining confidentiality at this point. If threat is imminent or it's very serious, it means confidentiality may be broken. And from Tarasov rule that was done, it clearly states that public safety outweighs confidentiality, which means that safety is more than or is likely to be taken into consideration over confidentiality. The second example is self-determination and best interest. Individuals' choices has to be respected, but at times their choices have negative outcomes. So the dilemma for social workers is to balance between the respect for right and the desire to guide towards positive outcomes. How they need to deal with an example where a client with substance abuse problem refuses to take treatment. The social worker now, when they know that treatment will help to improve their health and also their well-being. At the same time, they also know that the person has a right to make a decision or to make a choice. To guide them to navigate around such a dilemma, they need to presume capacity, meaning that when they are dealing with such a situation, they need to assume that the person has capacity to make the decisions. This presumption is until it has been proven that they don't have capacity. They provide support, that is explaining to the service user the consequences of their choice. They need to be made to understand, involve advocates as well to speak on the person's behalf, They can offer different forms of communication that is easier for the person to understand. In as much as the person would have made an unwise decision, it shouldn't be a basis by social worker to undermine that choice. We need to also have their best interests at heart. Once all those things have been put together, the social worker needs to then consult with possible alternatives as well. They document, and once that is done, they can offer very restrictive options to the service user, but at the same time they need to prioritize safety and health, which means their choice might not be taken as priority, but health is priority in this particular case. I also looked at essential steps that might be followed by social workers when they are dealing with a dilemma in any situation. For example, the first step is they need to establish whether it's ethics or it's a dilemma. Is it an ethical issue or it's a dilemma? They need to identify the ethical principles and values that are involved with that particular situation. They would also need to look at the potential risks and consequences of each option that is available. They also need to keep referring to their code of ethics and the legal requirements surrounding that particular dilemma. They need to also evaluate the perspective of the service user. They don't need to ignore it. They need to take that into consideration. Whatever choices they would have made, it needs to be taken into consideration. After that, they look at possible course of action to deal with this particular dilemma, and they consult with either the ethics committee or supervisors or relevant authorities. A decision is then made. At every step, documentation should be provided. After a decision has been taken, course of action has been made, documentation has been done, they also need to reflect on maybe the impact or the outcome of that particular action, and then take lessons from it so that in future references can be made to similar cases of dilemmas. I thank you.